Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Curtis, for the introduction. I'll just introduce the team here from Telehouse. We are very much opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of experience and tenure with Telehouse. On my right, I have Nick Layzell, who heads up our managed services practice, which is basically everything we do outside the kind of pure co-location. Nick joined the business in 1996, so obviously when he was 16 years old. So he's been around for about just over 23 years. I joined on April the 1st, so about 8 weeks ago. And I'm really stepping into I have the unenviable task, rather, of stepping into the shoes of Michelle Reed. It's probably an impossible task to follow her, but that's what I'm going to try and do. I guess the second thing to say is that we're really proud of our association with LINX. We've been associated for some 25 years, and we're very proud to be the sponsor, or the platinum sponsor here today and tomorrow. So please come by our store, which is just outside. If you want to talk to us about anything good, bad, or even ugly, then please come by, and we'll be happy to chat with you. So for those of you that don't know, we just wanted to give you a bit of background about who we are at Telehouse. Take ourselves back to 1989, which is a pretty important year from a technology perspective, but also from a political perspective. So, as you probably know, Tim Berners-Lee wrote his paper in March of that year, which led really to the construct of the World Wide Web, which has had a small impact on all of us in this room. And then in November of that year, we saw the Berlin Wall come tumbling down and the unification of East and West Germany. But sandwiched between those two events was the launch of Telehouse. So in June of that year, Telehouse launched and opened its first data center, actually in New York. So we are 30 years old this year, and we're very proud of that. We are going to have a birthday party in kind of September, October of this year, in the autumn. But as we enter our fourth decade, it'll be a much more subdued party than some of them we've had in the past. So for those of you that don't know, just a bit of background information on who we are. We are a subsidiary of the KDDI Corporation, which is the third largest telecommunications service provider in Japan. So what you might say, well, what that means is that we are financially very stable, very secure. More importantly, we have an organization that is committed to expanding not only in the European cities in which we're in today, which is London, Frankfurt, and Paris, but also investing into our back office systems and processes that enable you as the customers to have a better experience with you. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We are very, very proud, as I say, of our currently four data center campus in the Docklands. It's obviously a purpose-built DC campus. We have over 500 carriers and ISPs within that campus, and that's been really important as we've grown over the last 30 years, but it's actually going to be really super important as we try and solve for some of the business requirements and challenges as we move forward. So we see a huge change in the type of customers that are consuming our services. Nick's going to talk a little bit about the drivers behind that, but that fact that we have 500 plus carriers plus the LINX node is super important to us as we move forward. We also have our own substation, as you probably know. We built that for the 2012 Olympics, which I can't believe is 7 years ago. Seems like just yesterday, but we do have our own wholly owned grid substation there. And as I said before, we've been 25 years. We've been partners with LINX, so we're very proud of that partnership, and we hope we can augment, develop, and grow that partnership in the years to come. And certainly, we're in detailed discussions with our friends at LINX to how we can do that. And this really shows you just how important Telehouse and LINX partnership is. As you can see from this Peering DB bar chart, you can see that London continues to be the place where most peering and interconnection takes place. You can also see from this slide that we have a commitment to peering in our Paris Voltaire site, and we will continue to invest and develop in that site. And we have more capacity coming online in the next few years there. In terms of where we are globally, you can see that we're now in 4 regions: Africa through our partnerships in South Africa, Asia, EMEA, in London, Frankfurt, and Paris, and we will continue to grow our facilities there and in North America. So that's a little bit about the past. I think it's really important for everybody to share the information that we are absolutely 100% committed to expanding our Docklands campus. Just last week, we announced that we've got more capacity available in our North 2 facility. We're very pleased with that and have some demand coming through. But also we have some short, medium and long-term plans which will enable us to grow that campus yet further. Some of the information you've probably seen is in the public domain, but we are absolutely committed to growing that space. I think, candidly, one of the things we perhaps haven't been as good at as we'd like to be is the journey of the customer. But our number one priority at the moment is enhancing the customer experience. We call it the CX. It's a number one priority in the business, as I say, and we're investing a lot in our back office systems to really make it as easy as possible for our customers to do business with us, holding up our hands and saying that perhaps we haven't been able to do that in the past, but we have a new team on board which is helping us do that. We're also driving towards our kind of data center and business operations excellence. Hopefully some of you will have the chance to have met Paul Lewis, who's our new operations director. He's recently restructured the organization, brought in a number of new customer-facing and customer service type roles, which again will lead us to improve the experience that everybody has with Telehouse. And finally, we understand, and Nick will talk a lot more about this, that our customers need not just what we provide, but they need access to multiple cloud service providers. And we are in the process of rolling out and building our own cloud platform, which will enable our customers to not only consume data center space, but also leverage the benefits of multiple cloud providers. So that's all very good, and that's all about us and a little bit of background about us. And as I say, please come by and stop by our booth and tell us what we do well, what we do badly. But really, I think that the focus of this presentation is around what we're seeing as a complete paradigm shift in the way and the things that customers are buying our services for, and what that means to us. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Nick and take over.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks. Let me just get my...
Do you want to get rid of my notes?
Yeah, thanks. Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the kind of trends that we see, and as Mark said, you know, the changing face of the customer environment that we see, and of course that reflects on all of us here. I think ultimately we're delivering services to a set of customers, often together. And so even though this may focus towards the enterprise Telehouse data center type customer, it's also, I think, pretty appropriate for you guys as well. So edge computing, obviously a big buzzword. There's a few buzzwords here. This is 2019 trends really that we see. So edge computing, well, don't really think it's anything particularly new. We've been, I guess, and the audience have been delivering services to the edge for a long time. But of course, you know, despite it not being new for our kind of community, it certainly may be new for a lot of the enterprise market, for example. And it can be obviously help to reduce latency deploying at the edge there. And it's also in terms of edge computing, it's experiencing growth to satisfy the demand for the really high quality digital experiences that the consumer or the business expects now. Telehouse sees, for example, finance kind of leading and has been for a while in this area where they've had their edge network environment deployed in data centers such as ours, colo facilities for some time now. Of course, there's a continuing trend for customers to move out of their own data centers. You know that the days aren't quite past, but the predictions are that the majority of businesses will have moved out of their own traditional data centers where they may have significant infrastructure that they need to manage and service and operate, and that will. You know, that will continue. Not everything is going to move to the cloud, hopefully, but IT leaders and decision makers certainly need to think about where in more detail about where their workloads are going to be deployed, and also they need to you know, create an environment that houses more agile infrastructure, both in colo and in the cloud itself. So if we have a look at the enterprise demand, so driving the data center, and of course, digital transformation not being a really tangible word, but it's a thing that's kind of happening. But it's driving things like connectivity and as a differentiator when looking at data centers. Directly connecting to the cloud, of course, a hybrid strategy means the combination of colo and cloud. But the ability to be able to directly connect and consume these services is also a very important demand that we see from our enterprise space. Coupled with the traditional access to the physical space, without being able to virtualize everything, without being able to move every workload into the cloud, customers will still need the physical space for their legacy applications and infrastructure. That being said, the demand for their connectivity and space continuing, of course. Scalability is important, both up and down, but particularly in terms of power and that kind of thing. Scalability and the flexibility is something that remains important. And of course, security. It underpins what we do as a data center business and what customers need. Just a few words about some of the technology developments that we see driving the data center demand. Driving today, or will drive, maybe, the 5G and IoT, obviously, pushing demand for the edge. Lots of things in lots of places, all needing to connect and take advantage of low latency or close access. So when I talk about smaller edge data center facilities here, I don't necessarily mean a small data center, but small deployments in data centers, either centrally or more geographically diverse. And AI, of course, it will have an effect. So with the kind of move of AI to have the ability to be able to be used for predictive analytics. AI may be influencing the growth of infrastructure through that kind of predictive capability, without necessarily growing the staff that support that infrastructure. AI may have an influence on how that grows. And of course, the cloud providers will continue to drive demand for the network-dense connectivity environments. They are deploying significant amounts of infrastructure at their edge in the co-location environment. So very brief, very short and sweet, but I guess in summary, really, applications and infrastructure is becoming more power hungry, of course. Security around the infrastructure, either an organization's own infrastructure or the infrastructure it uses to run and operate its business, remains an absolute imperative. The requirements we see from the enterprise and from our customer base becoming more diverse, which is obviously driving us to need to understand in more detail what qualities and specific services that customer need, rather than the traditional space power cooling environment. Also, I think in terms of trend and our customers are becoming a more essential part of our Telehouse community. Of course, they've always been essential as customers, but in terms of community, sharing of services, offering services to each other, offering services to our customers that maybe are not so familiar with the connected environment is absolutely key. And as these customer demands change, as the enterprise demands change, as other businesses' demands change, I guess kind of coming back to Mark's comments, absolutely we continue to be committed to supporting the connectivity partners and providers that we have with us at Telehouse. Also the peering environments that are important and have always been important to us as an organisation to deliver services to our wider customer base. Okay, any questions?
Tim.
Tim?
Have a microphone back to you.
Thanks very much, guys. Mark, you said, so you talk about this huge change taking place, but I'd just like to flesh it out a bit more in terms of, you said huge change in consumption, people buying services from you. And you talked about some of the longer term trends in terms of moving out of enterprise, edge, etc. But what are you seeing day to day changing?
I think what we're seeing, Tim, is we're seeing the type of customers that are approaching us with projects that will consume our services have changed. Typically, we've been based around the internet-based community, so your cloud service provider content type organizations. But we're seeing now a lot more enterprise customers driving towards our data centers to use not just our colocation space, but to consume services from other people within our buildings as well. And whilst enterprise is a kind of massive catch-all for everything that doesn't fit into those other kind of three sectors, we're seeing a lot around fintech. We're seeing a lot around what we call gambling, gaming, and media, those kind of sectors as well. So, and we'll also begin to see a bit of take-up in things like healthcare, oil and gas, and so on. Does that answer your question? Cool. Any further questions? In that case, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.